Welcome back to 60 Miles from Anywhere. Today I'm going to talk about some insights I wanted to share about the uphill battle of working as a professional writer. For the last year, writing has become my sole source of income. It's been a frightening and eye-opening experience. So if you have any aspirations to do this for yourself, hold on and buckle up. If you like this episode, please check out my website, 60milesfromanywhere.com. There you'll find more stories on my blog as well as insights about creative writing. My fiction is available on Amazon.com, and you can find the link on my website. The book is called Song of the Cinder, and it's available in both trade paperback and ebook for Kindle. It makes a great gift for that lover of fantasy, alternate history, or horror in your life. Your donation to support this podcast and my website are always appreciated. You can click on the Buy Me a Coffee link, which you'll find on my website. Be sure to leave a rating or a comment on whatever platform you're subscribed to. Ratings and comments help improve my rankings on platforms such as Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Audible, and many others. I'm also an affiliate with Origin USA, a company that makes boots, jeans, martial arts gear, and all sorts of other things with 100% American sourcing, for lack of a better word. Click on the link on my website and use code Harris10 for 10% off your purchase. I've been wearing my boots for nearly 2 years, and I never leave home without them. All content is written, recorded, and produced by me, Clinton A. Harris. If you're interested in working with me for podcasting, writing, or other projects, please contact me via the links on my website. Again, that is 60milesfromanywhere.com. Let's start. This one is called Validation and the Pro Mentality as a Creative. Lately, I've been struggling with the idea of being a writer. There's a song by the band Arcade Fire called Sprawl 2. One of the lines from the song says, "They heard me singing and they told me to stop. Quit these pretentious things and just punch the clock." I feel like that a lot sometimes. I feel as though being a creative is something reserved for someone else, that it's not a life that I was ever meant to have. I was not born into privilege. My parents were working class. I've been working class most of my life. It's a caste system we're born into. I went to college to change the work I was going to do. Instead of beating my body into the dirt by holding up a shovel all day or driving a truck, I decided I wanted to become a writer. I was an English major without that safety net of combining it with a teaching license, too. I was offered a position in graduate school if I wanted to go on and get my master's degree, but I was so burned out on school by then I just couldn't bring myself to do it. A lot of the things they were teaching about writing, and especially about reading, were taking the magic out of it. I learned more about writing and rejection and rewriting from the time I spent on the internet forums. I got to sit at the feet of pro editors of fiction magazines, rub shoulders with award-winning writers. It changed my way of thinking about writing that had been professed to me in college by people who actually had no idea how publishing really worked outside of academia. I used to write part-time a lot. I used to fill up my hours when everybody went to bed and I had the quiet house to myself. I would sit there and work on my stories. Sometimes I would even fall asleep at the keys. When I woke up, it was complete gibberish on the screen that I was looking at. I wrote mostly fiction. I submitted around 10 stories each year to different publications. I started getting used to the word no. There are so many different ways to say no. It didn't grab my attention. It didn't hold my attention. Unfortunately, alas, it's weird when you get an acceptance. You have to read the letter a couple of times to really let it sink in. The yes is usually punctuated with a check. The checks weren't very much, but the rush you get from an acceptance after so many no's is crazy wonderful. It burns off pretty quick, though. Writers should not be in the business of writing for acceptance. The work is truly its own reward. The biggest rush I get is from being deep into a scene and I feel my mind disengage from my body. It feels like I've floated up from the keyboard a few inches. I'm hovering over myself, being vaguely aware that someone is sitting in a chair typing their guts out. But the rest of the room dissolves all around me. Everything in my mind just drifts. That's the high I chase, or the moment when I open up an old file and I read it and I think, holy shit, who wrote this? That can be dangerous, because then you're comparing yourself to your own high watermark, which can send you down the rabbit hole of, I'll never be that good again, my life is a lie. The money I make at the moment comes from freelance writing. I'd been working part-time for around 12 years doing this, writing copy for companies. Now I've been doing it full-time for nearly 3. That can be a major kick in the teeth, too. Writing copy these days involves a lot of connecting the dots when it comes to appeasing an AI algorithm. Keywords, active versus passive voice, headings, bulleted lists, internal and external links. The end of a lot of copy these days just sounds like word salad. Companies have latched onto this mode of thinking because they want exposure more than they want quality engagement with potential clients and readers. All that matters is being on that first page of a Google search. And by the time you connect all the dots and jump through the hoops, you have a slightly informative pile of crap someone is going to pay you for, and likely complain that they could have done just as well on their own for free. When people give you money for something, with it comes the right to bitch about it, no matter what they ask for in the first place. When I write copy, I detach in other ways. I just put one word down in front of the next until I hit the word limit and I've accomplished all the tasks that I was asked to do. I learned how to do that in college. It's all just putting checks in the margins. The high you get from an acceptance comes in the form of monetary reward in this case. Lots of clients will pay you grudgingly and then write you a shitty review. I don't read reviews like that. The feedback was the check clearing. A win is a win. My validation for that kind of work is being able to pay my cell phone bill. I did taxes the other day. It was my first year at 100% freelance writing for doing taxes. No unemployment checks, no savings, just writing. And this is going to horrify some of you. My income as a freelance writer was not that great. And since it's private information, I'm going to say low 5 figures. I will go on to say that anyone who saw my actual income for the last year would probably question my sanity. They might equate me to someone yelling at pigeons in the park or people who aren't there, which is sort of like writing, honestly. This might be the most amount of work I've done for the least amount of pay in my entire life. None of this would make sense to anyone who's enjoyed a life of doing what other people tell them to do all day long. I had that life for a long time. I remember days when I would be sitting at my desk, just staring at the clock on the wall. All of my tasks for the day were done, and I had nothing else to do except scroll social media or listen to my fat supervisor sitting across the room, breathing out of her mouth. Days like that were a struggle. I don't mean that in a, hoo boy, being bored sucks kind of way, but more in a way that every day my values were being taken to task. I got to be a faceless part of the machine. Every day I was reminded of my station at the job and how I was never, ever going to progress beyond that. That I was unworthy of the life that faculty and administrators had because I wasn't educated to their level. The struggle was often questioning my existence and whether or not I should continue doing so. Yes, it was that bad. Now, for anyone who's ever worked a job and beaten themselves to death, driving a piece of heavy equipment or shoving someone's organs back into their body, I understand that your worst day is probably harder than someone's worst day sitting in an office. But the movie Office Space is funny for a reason. It shows the soul-sucking environment and a nice candy-coated pill that's easier to swallow than going into a place that doesn't give a fuck about you and plans to drain anything good left in you, all the way out until nothing remains. All the while reminding you how non-essential and arbitrary your very existence is, and justifying the shitty pay you get by saying, there are harder jobs out there. I did that for 20 years. None of us ever felt appreciated. All of us lived paycheck to paycheck, and I can't really think of any times any of us felt fulfilled in what we did. Our achievements were always claimed by the person above us, and their failures were passed on down to us. It was an abusive environment. Then the job ended, and after 20 years, those doors were closed to me for good. I can tell you right now with total certainty that my worst day writing beats my best day working in that office. The pay sucks right now, but I have a sense of fulfillment I was never allowed to have when I worked there. I'm my own boss. I can make my own decisions. My victories are mine, as are my defeats. My values are my values. I'm not shilling some bullshit institution and making it sound like I actually support that kind of fuckery. The problem with all of this is looking at my taxes. I still felt that pull of equating my value and sense of worth with how many digits are in my adjusted earned income. I was proud that as a small business owner, I had at least 3 digits. I really mean that. Everything that I earned resulted from my work. It was something I could put my name on. The lowest amount of money I've ever made in my life was something I accomplished. It wasn't much, but it was mine. I guess I'm probably supposed to feel bad that I didn't make a ton of money. That's what everybody's taught to feel anyway. This ideal that your value is based on money. These billionaires were taught to aspire to become. The amount of wealth they have is inconceivable. They could never spend that amount of money in their lifetime. I think that Andrew Carnegie understood that, which is why so many libraries for 100 years had his name on them. He put those donations up to educate people because he came up from nothing. Maybe he felt guilty about having all the money and all the toys before he died. Who knows what his true motivation was. So many millionaires died on the Titanic just as easily as poor-ass people drowning in steerage. I've known people who have had so much money and were never happy. I think the money drove them crazy. Now, the argument for this would be that money can't buy you happiness, but it can get you plane tickets. I knew a woman once whose father took her to Naples with him. She spent most of the time calling me or texting me from her hotel room. She was lonely. She took for granted what she could have been doing, but it wouldn't have mattered anyway because the one thing she couldn't buy was companionship. She was living for how others saw her, not for any visceral experience of her own. Someone might look at my life and say I'm crazy for finding meaning in writing. They'll look at my yearly earnings and call me a loser. There's part of me that thinks maybe it should be bothered by that, but if I really let those feelings in, I just might be. I'd let someone judge me who knew nothing about me. They definitely didn't know about the times I didn't even want to go on living because my life had no meaning for so long. You can have more money than you'd ever know what to do with, but if your life has no meaning and you fill it up with nothing but pleasure and distraction, you're digging yourself an early grave. I wish I could take credit for that, but I borrowed a lot of that from Viktor Frankl. He wrote a book called Man's Search for Meaning. He survived the death camps at Auschwitz. His worst day was probably worse than just about anyone's, and he attributes his survival to having something meaningful to live for. Money doesn't provide meaning. It's a means of survival. Having lots of money is what those kinds of people use to validate their misery. They worked hard for that. They can go anywhere. They can buy a lot of toys. They can spend the weekend at the lake or the cabin or their house in Aspen. But they don't. They just work more and more. They just take more and more. They wonder why their life is empty and they're crying to a stranger at 3 a.m. Naples time that they just want to come home. That they spend most of their day drunk or popping antidepressants. They can't sleep without their Xanax, or they can't, whatever. I made the opposite of a lot of money, and most people wouldn't understand that for me, this year has taught me so much about happiness. Finding peace in myself, realizing that someone else's expectations of me don't serve me in any way, especially if those people have no respect for me anyway. If those people wish me harm. If those people cannot fathom the depths that I've sunk to on my own bad days and still fought to come up for another breath. After doing taxes, I looked at it instead as looking back at my first step towards a new life. A life that has every chance of improving. A step that many over the years have told me was impossible, that it was likely going to kill me, that I was going to starve to death. I took that step, and though I'm not an overnight success, I am alive. I made it further on that first step than a lot of people, including myself, would have ever given me credit for. Miserable people judging me. People who listen to my podcast and read my blogs with bated breath that I might slip and fall. To waste that much time and effort in just hoping someone will die trying must be exhausting. I can think of a million other things I'd rather be doing myself. Searching for meaning and fulfillment is at the top of that list. When I made the decision to follow my dreams and put into action everything I've been working towards since college, I did so with the understanding that it would be unlike anything I'd ever attempted. I had the skills, but nobody ever told me how to accomplish my goals. I didn't even know what goals to set. It scared the hell out of me. Was I allowed to be my own boss? Is that a thing? A few of my friends told me not to do it. My ex-wife told me for years that in my mind I could be the janitor or the CEO and nothing else. She thought of me only as the janitor, and that was all I ever deserved to be. Working for myself, I guess I'm both. It's okay to be the CEO of your life, even if you have to empty out your own garbage cans. It's okay to reach out for something no one ever told you you could have. The idea is so scary to most people that you don't have to rely on a boss to give you something, that you would be completely lost without someone telling you exactly what to do for them. Jeez, I can't even begin to explain how fucked up that is. It makes me think of slavery and how the slave owners used to say their slaves were incapable of caring for themselves, even though they were doing all the damn work. In my travels, I've talked with other creatives, writers, artists, buskers. It's terrifying. This world has made itself into a thing that has almost no room for creatives. Don't quit your day job, they tell you. I've watched TikToks of buskers playing in cities and having people approach them and accuse them of being beggars, as though playing a musical instrument and singing for spare change took zero skill or effort. Why? Because someone else wasn't signing their checks? Because people are so tone deaf to what separates people from beasts that they consider it begging? Is the irony lost on them that every 2 weeks they beg for compensation for their time working at a job they hate? Or those monthly checks from the government they get from Social Security that they will likely die before ever getting everything they put in? When I read a poem, regardless of how long I could retain any of it to recite, those words are part of my soul for the rest of my life. When I hear a song, it brings back memories of the best or worst time when I heard that song before. When I read a book, I get to trespass into the mind of someone else. Creativity is about connection. Ironically enough, most of what oppresses us in our daily lives is about division. I've talked with people who sit and play the harp all afternoon for tips, who go home happy at the end of every night. And I've talked with successful career people who drink too much and probably think about putting a pistol in their mouth every day. Yet nearly every one of us depends on something someone has created to give our lives enjoyment. The books we read, the shows we watch, the concerts and music we listen to. Someone created that. They expressed what we didn't know needed to be expressed until we experienced it through their lens. We act as though these people are born a world apart, like they aren't even in the same species. as though that world is something you're born into. Someone like me could never create something, right? I mean, look at how little money I've made. Only people with a ton of money can create anything, right? I made it through a year I never could have imagined I would have gotten through. 4 digits on my tax return. 4. It's not much, but it brings me joy. All this talk of what people should be doing, and I wonder how many people are unhappy because they're doing what they shouldn't. Not only did I survive this, I lived. I overcame the first step. I'm doing it. It's actually happening. So I'm going to keep going. One of the biggest satisfactions nowadays is when anyone asks, "What do you do?" I can tell them without flinching, I am a writer. I hope you've liked this episode, and I hope it's given you some inspiration to keep following your passion and your dream. Any dream that starts off as just a small kernel of truth or whatever you want to put into it, whatever you want to call it. Be freaky, be new agey about it, call it your journey, call it whatever you want, but it's yours, and it's yours to carry with you as far as you want to take it. I've been kind of slacking last month. I guess I took most of February off, but it was kind of a good place to recover and reassess what I was doing. That's important to do too. I've been busy with all sorts of different little projects and trying to bump up those numbers for my tax return next year. But I still do enjoy doing this. I'm getting a little bit better and a little less tongue-tied. And I just kind of want to help other people along because I haven't had a lot of guidance myself. Kind of doing all this by the seat of my pants. So if you like what you hear, please send me a note. Let me know. Every time I hear from a listener that they've liked the show, it makes me want to keep going. And this is not my primary gig, but I do like connecting with people. And I do like sharing my insight and telling people what's going on in my life. Not every podcast is going to be about the writing life. It's just, I'm in the middle of winter right now in North Park. And there's not a lot of places to go and not a lot of stuff to do while this much snow is on the ground. So it's a whole struggle. I hope you've enjoyed this episode. Take care of that dream. It's yours.